Welcome to the 2021 Social Impact Knowledge Exchange wrap-up session, proudly presented by Corporate Citizenship and Business for Societal Impact. Over the past 4 days, we've heard from 4 researchers from across Australia, and these sessions provided you with an opportunity to help develop their research for the benefit of the community at large, as well as increase your knowledge in their given area of expertise. Loren shared that there was so much focus on the harms that technologies of the future can and do bring. Undoubtedly, we have a responsibility to reduce these harms and protect ourselves and future generations from their impacts.
One of the things that came out from both of the conversations was this sort of association of dignity with things like dying with dignity and social justice types of concepts, which seem quite far away from a corporate environment. And then at the same time, these sort of a live question, which has been solidified for me around, well, what does dignity bring? In addition to concepts that are already in organisations around wellness or around inclusion.
I think it was that idea of the mindset that goes with that dichotomy of protection and proactivity or promotion that was compelling for me.
I think the bit that I picked up the most was the discussion around protective and proactive behaviours.
I also like that you touched on, Lorraine, on the government's role. Canadian government had like a directive which sits in the Treasury, which I hadn't heard of, which is really interesting.
So Sam shared the Australian Leadership Index, the ALI, which is Australia's largest study of leadership for the common good. ALI tracks public perceptions and expectations of leadership for the good across all sectors, providing key insights into the state of leadership for the good, as well as guidance about how to improve it.
One of the things that we're always interested in doing is not only measuring how people see things, how enchanted or disenchanted they are, but also what we can do to improve things. That's the ultimate aim of this sort of work. And I think part of what I've learned this week is just how difficult it actually is to perhaps translate some of these abstract ideas about the good, about social value and so forth, into some sort of tangible, concrete action that you can take in a way which is sort of authentic, but that does somehow contribute to the broader sort of flourishing, which is one way of thinking about the wider public interest.
It was a comment that was made almost towards the end of the session. It was quite interesting that individuals and their perception can often be skewed depending on how close they are to that organisation or how much, well, again, talking purely from an industry and organisation point of view, that can often be skewed, and that can also play out in the media as well.
It also made me think quite a lot about how do we go about influencing what's in society and the information that society is getting, whether that's through media, public relations, government, non-government organisations. It kind of opened up a whole new realm of interest for me.
Sally's research, conducted by King's College London and the Australian National University, examined stakeholders' perspectives on gender pay gap reporting in 6 countries: Australia, Sweden, Spain, France, the UK and South Africa. They considered the opportunities and challenges of different reporting approaches. These practical insights reveal the limitations of each approach, but also how gender pay gap reporting can best leverage to create change. So I think my key takeaway here was the definition of the gender pay gap. I hadn't realised that it was a comparison between average male wages and average female wages.
I loved hearing what organisations are doing on workplace gender equality this week. Many of you shared what your organisations are doing. It seems that all organisations are doing something or prioritising this as an issue to deal with. Jen, like you, I was surprised that people didn't know what the gender pay gap is and how that's calculated, but it's not about looking at 2 people and like for like work. It's about the average earnings of men and women in society. I guess in terms of going forward and what that means, I think we've got a bit of work to do in educating people in society about what the gender pay gap is, why it's used as a measure to look at gender inequality in society.
I share with others that I was horrified that we're going backwards on the Global Gender Gap Index, and I think as a country we wouldn't know that. That I actually went home and talked to my husband about it. He's like, that can't be right, and I was like, no, in fact, and he was just horrified. I was really concerned that the reporting isn't translating into action, and it sort of made me think about a lot of the areas of our business where we identify an issue. And so you know the issue exists, but then what do you do to address that issue?
Building on the results from the first ever organisational courage survey, she explored how courage is perceived within organisations, what might motivate companies to include courage within their values, and the obligation to build that courage is not just that courage is a true value. My key takeaway here was the difference between knowing and doing is courage. And I loved hearing how courage was contagious and how it's important to point out courage when you see it.
Personally, I think it was just enabling me more to think about those points where I can speak up, both personally in my life. It was it's like a psychological counselling session, like I said, but also in the workplace. I think it was just helping me and our team, the other members that were sort of participating, to really envisage how we can bring courage back to our work.
Maybe with risk management, organisations, you know, that there is that thing of, you know, we're sort of perfect and we've got a lovely, smooth, clean, shiny surface. But actually, maybe the thing about risk management is, of course, it's dynamic, and it is about, you know, points of time and you know, how much progress have we made, and we don't do things perfectly.
What sort of resonated and what stuck with me was the idea of vulnerability and what we spoke about in terms of where it's actually appropriate to be vulnerable. And there is a spectrum there of, you know, oversharing or going the other way as well. So I think for me, it's interesting because it ties in not only on a personal level, but also as an organisation, is it the right thing to be vulnerable and to sort of bare our chest a little bit and say, hey, we don't have all the answers here, but we're looking to take the right steps or the first steps or many steps.
I wrote down vulnerability is a source of courage. And so similar to what Hugh was saying before, I think for me personally, it's just thinking about, but maybe at an organizational level as well, having the courage to make a mistake and, you know, being able to demonstrate we are trying to make some progress towards some things, and we're not always going to get it right. But also at a personal level, I think being able to display that authentically to colleagues and just to, I guess, bring that conversation to light.
One of the big things I took was the 4 courage building skills, and that it was a trainable, learnable skill, and that courage is contagious. So if you hear about examples where someone's taking courage, that it can lead to someone else being more courageous. So from a corporate perspective, that could mean sharing stories within our organisation or outside our organisation of someone being courageous to give people the comfort that the risk or whatever they're about to do, it's okay for them to try.
Thank you all for joining us today.